Putin has reached a stalemate in his war with Ukraine. It's been going on for more than 4 years. He's unable to gain more territory. He's losing between 1,000 and 1,500 troops a day. His oil refineries and oil terminals and warehouses of online retailers are being bombed by the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are developing more and more sophisticated weapons. He's reached a stalemate, and he's short on money. And money is what he uses to hire more troops. He's paying troops to go to the front line. He can't get those troops because he doesn't have the money, and a lot of people don't want to go to the front line anymore. And so he's kind of in a bind. And so what does he do in this bind? Well, the one thing he could do is test whether Article 5 of NATO is real. Article 5 of NATO is this treaty which says that any NATO member that's attacked means that all NATO members will come to their defense. All for one, one for all. That's what it says in theory. We've heard a lot of indications from the U.S., from Donald Trump, that he wouldn't honor Article 5 as a member of NATO. And so Putin may be in some position to want to test that. And he may want to test that specifically to change the whole nature of the war. If he were to attack a NATO country, and when I say attack, I don't mean rolling tanks in. I mean doing something which is almost hard to define, a drone attack or some type of sabotage. But if he were to attack a NATO country to the point when it then has to be decided, does NATO invoke Article 5? He might do that with the expectation that Trump says, I'm not going to get involved. And then he's got this situation where you have NATO without America, a bunch of European countries that can't agree on much. And you might have a situation where at the same time as he attacks NATO, he says to the European countries that can't agree on much, listen, if you don't go to war with me, or I won't go to war with you if you stop funding Ukraine. And that may be the way that he tries to win this war with Ukraine. If Ukraine doesn't get European funding, then they will lose the war. And so that has to be his objective, is to somehow figure out how to get the Europeans not to continue funding Ukraine, and that would be a good way to do it. Russia is running out of soldiers. The Ukrainians are killing Russian soldiers faster than Russia can replace those soldiers. How does Russia get its soldiers? It goes to poor regions and says, we'll give you a lot of money if you go to the front line. And a lot of very poor young men thought that was a good idea, but none of them came home. And so Russia has done two things. One is it's cleared out most of the poor young men who are so desperate for this money. And two, anyone who's left is smart enough to see that you're probably not going to survive. It's a suicide mission. And so and then I guess there's a third point, which is Russia is running out of money to pay huge amounts to get these soldiers coming to the front line. And so this puts Russia in a very weak position because they need to replenish their soldiers to carry on the war. And so there's been very strong rumors that Russia will, instead of paying people, will impose a conscription, a full conscription, which means that all young men between a certain age and another age will be required to go and fight in the war. If that happens, it will be enormously unpopular. It will bring the war home to every household in Russia. Most young men are not going to want to fight in the war, and they're going to try to leave the country. Russia will then have to impose border controls for young men, which will make people even more desperate to leave the country and make people more angry inside of Russia. And that's the dilemma that Putin is facing right now. When the war started, it was supposed to be a 3-day war in which Russian troops were going to be welcomed with open arms into Kiev. And of course, that hasn't happened. But Putin's big idea when he started the war was that it was a war that wasn't going to affect the average Russian person. So much so that he didn't even want to call it a war. He called it a special military operation. And if you even were to publicly declare that it was a war, you could face 8 years in jail. And so his design was to make this sort of a theoretical war as far as the Russians were concerned, a virtual war. And now it's gone on, of course, for more than 4 years, longer than the Great Patriotic War and all other wars that Russia has been in recent times involved in. There's been 1.5 million casualties. Life is really very dramatically affected inside of Russia. And the more it's affected, the more Putin is in a position where it's not a popular war. And just remember that the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, which lasted 10 years, only led to 15,000 deaths of soldiers. This one, we're talking about, we don't know the exact number of deaths, but the 1.5 million casualties, probably at least half of those are deaths. I mean, this is on a scale that's unimaginable compared to the Afghan situation. And it was the mothers of these troops who died in Afghanistan that eventually led to the public pressure for the Soviets to end that war. Now, Putin is not easily pressured, and no matter what the economic costs are, no matter what the physical costs are, he's going to carry on. But there may be a point when, if the economy is so badly affected and there's such a shortage of economic revenue for the war, that Putin may not be able to execute the war in a successful way. And maybe the war will end with Ukraine's effective victory. Nobody knows exactly how it's going to work. Russia certainly has a lot more resources than Ukraine does. It's a country 10 times the size in terms of military apparatus and much bigger in terms of population. But Ukraine has found the Achilles heel of the Russian economy, which is these economic nodes. Logically, if they're going after wild berries, there's another Amazon company. It's called Ozone. It's similar to wild berries, and so it doesn't quite make sense why they would hit wild berries and not Ozone, which is the replacement Amazon kind of company in Russia. So it's not as if people can't get goods at all. There's still an alternative. But basically, it would seem to me that all Russian economic activity should be at risk, and wherever the most economic activity is, should be the target. And so if they're targeting oil refineries, that's good. If they're targeting oil exports, that's good. They might be thinking about targeting metals exports. That's another big source of income for the Russian economy. Anywhere that the Ukrainians can find where there's economic flows going to the Russian economy and to the Russian government should be fair game.